how much of an offset we'll see to try and be like, I don't know 100% what you're going to do, baby, so I'll play it safe, or if that won't come into play at all. But we're ready. We're loaded in. We're going to kick things off on 2,000 atmospheres. And in the bottom left, we have the blue Protoss player. He is TriGGeR.
And that, of course, means that on the top right side, we're looking at the main base of the man who's already won the DreamHack Masters NA once, but he wants to do it again. Our red Protoss player also representing Team Alpha X. It is Astrea.
So Kev, you got a favorite strategy on this map for PvP? Is there anything we should be on the lookout for that this map enables versus any others, or are we just kind of looking at something maybe more normal?
I actually think this is one of these maps where 3 base pushes, or like the 2.5 kind of pushes, are a pretty powerful one. Where, you know, you can make it seem like everything is standard, but then actually you start building probes at 44 or 46, maybe max 48, and you just run to the other side of the map with a prism, stalkers, sentries, and you try to end it. Other than that, I think it's kind of the same. It really just depends what your opponent is doing. Seems like one of them is thinking of building a Stargate in the bottom side of the map. At least I'm gonna assume it's a Stargate. For a Robo, I feel like it's a little far out, and a gateway doesn't make too much sense to me, so I guess Astrea is going for a proxy Stargate.
Yeah, seems to be the case. He's got the probe there. Pylon is done. Cybercore will be finishing in a moment. And TriGGeR definitely has to be aware, right, that there's no second pylon in here, and he would be supply blocked without it. So hopefully some alarms are going off upstairs that, hey, need to be a little bit careful. Not 100% sure which way this might be coming from. And he's going to drop his third pylon down at the bottom of that ramp. But Kev, it is the Stargate. You think Oracle in this situation?
Yeah, I think that's really the only choice. It's way too far away for Void Rays. TriGGeR is actually going for a Stargate himself in the main base. Astrea does get the scout out of it though. Now this probe scout is so late that you pretty much know 100% that it wasn't just a pylon, unless he's really trying to fake it. And look at where these stalkers of TriGGeR are going. He is heading towards that Stargate. He's actually clicking on the low ground, I believe. Will he go deep enough to see it though? No, he turns around. Are you kidding me?
Oh, just barely missing that one. Okay, so the Oracle is on the way. He's got his own Stargate building inside of his base. And the 2 Adepts going to see this probe pick that off. So Astrea ready to start and bring that pressure. But the Stalkers are kind of out of position for this. I think he has a probe by the ramp, though, so he shouldn't be able to just phase in, and he does not. He gets the battery block off in time. Don't think he can brute force his way through this before it finishes, can he?
You sort of can, but by the time that happens, you're already going to lose 1 Adept, so no, that's not really going to work. No, Pulsar Beam is not the right choice here, I think, for Astrea, unless the Stalkers never make it here, but they do, so in the end, this Oracle will only get a single kill. And Astrea's like, you know what, that's going to be it. I'm going to make a second Oracle.
Well, the Adepts get inside of Astrea's base, and he's going to get, it looks to be at least 3 probes, reaching for that 4th one right now as it tries to scurry away, and he does not get it. But awkward start here, huh?
That's a missed opportunity, by the way. Instead of chasing, he obviously should have just kept that Adept in range of the mineral line and settled for a different probe, because he was easily able to get 3, if not 4 shots up there, so would have been a guaranteed kill. Let's see if this one Oracle of TriGGeR is able to get something done. Wow, that is so crazy, mate. What are you looking at? I cannot believe he just flew in there. He saw the Stalkers, and he just flew straight into all the Stalkers of Astrea.
Yeah, that's definitely one way to put yourself into an awkward situation. I was gonna say, I'm like, hey, it wasn't a bad start. Didn't really lose much to Astrea's proxy Stargate. Didn't lose too much to those Adepts. But you know, taking all that damage. The tragedy of Protoss, Roddy, you can't repair anything. It's mind-numbingly frustrating to think that the most advanced alien civilization has no way of fixing anything.
The Phoenixes are actually going to find each other. They won't go for the double KO. It's kind of funny how they both went 1 Oracle, 1 Phoenix. This Phoenix obviously only serves one purpose, and that is to find that Oracle. Same goes for Astrea. He knows that Oracle is very low on HP. I wonder if Astrea is going to suicide it. It seems like that's not. He's just kind of flying around in the center of the map. Astrea is sending out a probe. I wonder what this probe is all about. Is he going to build a gateway? Yeah, he's going to have slightly quicker blink. And it almost feels like Astrea is gearing up for a blink stalker timing.
All right, let's see how that one goes. Yeah, he passed by the tower.
No.
Pulls back over carefully. I don't think you want to drag that other Phoenix over where you're going to build that if that's what the plan is. He's going to build that pylon very close to where that third base is, Kev. Is this... what do we make of this? Is this too close? This was I guess to avoid the Phoenix because it went all the way around the edge, but...
It ain't too close if he doesn't find it. If TriGGeR goes down the ramp, he is going to see it. If he moves that Oracle just a little bit towards the right... TriGGeR, he's going to drop a stasis trap. If he moves it a little bit towards the right, it would be a massive tell. He still doesn't see it, and he's actually going to fly into all the units of Astrea that are making their way, and loses the Oracle. Still doesn't know about the pylon, but he does know about all the stalkers.
Well, that's a hell of a stasis trap, Roddy, and... yeah, you've got a couple of adepts that he warped in, but the army not able to actually work together to do anything. And yes, he's going to warp in, but it's the slow warp in. He doesn't have the gateway. He doesn't have that speed boost. So this is just going to turn into, I guess, a bit of a micro battle. He has his blink done. So is the stalker count even enough? Look at they're going all over the place with these blinks.
Yep, there are two adepts in the natural, by the way, finding quite some damage. So good moves here by Astrea. What felt like should have been really bad for him actually turned into something that's quite good. TriGGeR was so occupied in trying to catch those stalkers. Now the adept shade into the main base too. They'll find some more damage. This was really well done by Astrea because it felt like he was in trouble. But instead, he turned trouble into something very, very positive for himself.
I think that was right there. The call an ambulance. But not for me situation. He thought he had him. He had him stasis trapped, but he actually had the reinforcements. He was able to buy time. There wasn't really much of a fight per se. But yeah, the adept slipping in at that exact moment when those stalkers were trying to chase. It was almost like fortunate that he stepped into the stasis trap because I'm not sure that TriGGeR would have moved his units that far out on the map otherwise.
I'm totally with you, and I gotta say, Astrea did a really good job in at first saving the two stalkers that were not trapped, and then by the time that his stasis trap was going to run out, he actually warped in extra stalkers, and then he brought back the initial two stalkers that never got trapped. Now TriGGeR feels he can just take this fight immediately, so he blinks forward, ends up losing a stalker. It does feel like Astrea is just getting slightly better traits across the board. The one thing that our young Canadian Protoss has over the American is that he does have an observer on the other side of the map, and observers are very, very, very useful in PvP, so it could kind of give him the heads up of what Astrea is heading into.
Yeah, getting a look at that third base, maybe check out if there's anything hidden inside of the main. Astrea is getting his charge, which is almost done, but he's actually going to send two stalkers in. So he could pick off a couple of probes. There isn't a shield battery here. So what is that? Just two volleys from each of them is going to be enough. Shave off some workers to see that tech. The Phoenix comes in, and there's the recall.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with the 4-stalker hit squad. The 2-stalker hit squad is kind of new to me because stalkers don't fire all that quick. But
hit squad on a budget, Kev.
Yeah, it's tough times for all of us. Well, he turned it into something. He got two probes, got a scout, knew exactly when the Templar Archives was finishing up. So, I mean, it's a little move. Won't bring him much, but it gives him a little something.
So his Prism is about to finish, Astrea's that is. And now with the Templar Archives, he's starting to add Archons into this. Archon charge lot. It's not really the Archon charge lot Immortal because he has all those stalkers from earlier. He hasn't really invested heavily into that. That fourth base now going up for TriGGeR. The Zealot is there. He sees it. But do you think he just pushes with the Prism when it comes out, or is he going to be looking for just harass kind of plays?
Well, I actually think that Astrea is very, very happy to see that Nexus go down. He's like, cool, so I can take a fight away from all your static defenses. I like that. And TriGGeR just did something that really triggered me, no pun intended. But he warped in 5 High Templars. It's really annoying when you warp in an uneven amount of High Templars, because now he has to wait so long, and now that Archon is not an Archon yet. And this is where Astrea would love to take the fight, because he knows he didn't invest into the things that his opponent invested into. Almost loses the Warp Prism, but not quite. The batteries are close to finishing up though, and I gotta say, TriGGeR is actually doing quite decent here so far.
Yeah, and that gets a little bit dicey too, because he's given up some of the real estate on this retreat path. And if that Warp Prism gets picked off, he is not going to be able to end this. That choke point with the rocks starting to become annoying for him as well. And if he takes the time to work on that, well, that's plenty enough time for TriGGeR to reset, get everything that he needs. That shield battery he had by that Nexus, by the way, clutch. We talked about him trying to avoid the static defense. TriGGeR found a way to defend anyway.
Gotta say, if you look at the minimap and Astrea's vision, that's actually quite sexy. It's really hard to have that much vision in a PvP, but it feels like Astrea has pretty much every single part of the map covered. The only thing that TriGGeR really sees are his 4 bases. He does know that Astrea is trying to go up to 4 bases too. I guess the one advantage our young Canadian Protoss has is that his Robo Bay is done. So he can start building disruptors, but it's just one disruptor at a time. It seems like Astrea is trying to come in from multiple angles. I mean, it's all about Archon numbers, and they actually favor TriGGeR. And Astrea has a lot of Zealots still in the center of the map that are not participating in this fight at all.
Yeah, he's trying to peel the army back so he can go in on that expansion. They focus down the shield batteries and the cannons first, trying to make sure that it won't be as simple as just kind of regenerating to help on those probes. Wants to keep the damage output high as he pulls back to his 4th expansion. And some of TriGGeR's army getting a little bit separated there. As a few Zealots get shaved off.
I don't like that TriGGeR is where he is right now with his main army, because he has a disruptor, but it's not here. He's got a tech advantage, but yeah, he's obviously not really utilizing that. And on top of that, there's no prism with this army, so you gotta be real careful when you send your army to the other side of the map, especially after you just barely defended. Like, why is he here, Nate?
Good question. Good question, Roddy. There's another attack headed towards that southeast expansion. Looks like he's warped in some more units to rally forward as those Zealots might be looking for that mineral line. And while that army is just so out there, the first disruptor is going to join TriGGeR's army. And that could be something that if Astrea is not 100% aware that that's the tech that's coming out right now, he might find himself a little clumped up. Wow. And that is not going to be a problem for him. Doesn't get him quite there. So many of these Zealots are behind the Archons on that ramp, Roddy.
Yep, I mean, there are still the Archons in the front for TriGGeR. There's a lot of supply of Astrea in the bottom side. The Immortals are packing a punch, but now there are units coming in from the right side too. And it feels like Astrea just has enough to hold here. I don't really understand why we had to lose the game here on TriGGeR's side. He was the one with a Robo Bay. Economically, it was honestly very even. It's not like he had a worse army. If anything, he was going to have a better army. But then he kind of forced himself to go up a very tiny ramp, and then his one disruptor shot. Like, sure, if that one shot was money, I'd be like, all right, you know, send it, close your eyes, and hope that you get the job done. But that one disruptor shot did nothing. It clipped one Zealot, I believe, and then it feels a bit silly to push the issue that hard when there is no reason to.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Kev, especially with right as that fight was starting. You're talking about, I mean, the disruptor shot didn't land, but they were about 8 Zealots behind those 2 Archons while they were trying to fight for the first like 7 or so seconds. And eventually he let them through, but he let them through when all the other Zealots were already dead. So they just also walked into the Archon meat grinder, and there just wasn't enough there to support it. He brought the rest of those units back, and that was just a really difficult situation. Astrea really likes investing into these gateway units, by the way. Didn't see much in the way of the Immortals or a Disruptor or any other sort of tech that he was aiming for.
No, solid game by Astrea, especially because not everything went his way, but I think there really were opportunities for TriGGeR, not just in the late game, but even in the early game. Like, obviously, he shouldn't send his Oracle in like that. Could be some nerves because he's still very young, and sure, he had a great run last season, but that doesn't mean that all of a sudden you sit down and you're like, I'm a veteran now, and I'm ready to show the world what I'm made of. You know, these are still the big leagues, so it only makes sense that there are some misclicks, but yeah, that one Adept should not have chased the probe. If it doesn't, he gets 2 more probe kills in, I think, a very crucial phase of the game, because at that point you're only working with like 25 probes or something. And then that Oracle, if it doesn't fly into 3 Stalkers, but it just flies into the natural, gets 2 probes, stays healthy. A couple of little things. I think TriGGeR played good, but I also want to give a massive compliment to Astrea, because at one point you look at his map vision, Zelnaga, pylons everywhere, observers somewhere, Zealot on patrol. I'm like, yep, that's what separates good players from the very best.
Indeed, it does. Having all that vision, knowing where things are, knowing what's happening is always going to give you the edge in a lot of these types of games, especially when it gets down to the wire with those fights, because we definitely had some chances for this guy in the top left, our blue Protoss player, currently trailing 0-1. He is TriGGeR.
1 and 2 in this group so far, but did also already go up against Scarlet, who's of course a very tough opponent for anyone in this region. In the bottom right side, we're looking at the main base of the man who's still undefeated, 2-0 in series and 5-0 in maps at this point. Can he make it 3-0 and 6-0? It is Astrea.
And we see TriGGeR's probe come out just a little bit as Astrea's reaches his base. Gonna give him a little tase on the way in. Well, how about this map then, Kev? My favorite thing is you have the encyclopedic knowledge. Do you have a favorite PvP build here? Is there something on Lightshade we maybe keep our eyes open for, or something that's particularly popular on this map that you know of?
Okay, I think when we scout this, if we're TriGGeR, it all depends on what you scout in the early game, right? But Astrea is going for the 1 gate, fast expand on the low ground, before the cyber core even. If I'm TriGGeR, I'd be not too afraid to either 3-gate or 3-gate robo. I actually think that's a decent choice, but it is kind of hard to hide it, because now at this point you can already see that Astrea is chasing the scouting probe of TriGGeR in the center of the map. But it does seem that TriGGeR wants to be aggressive here, and I don't hate it. I'm really curious to see what he's going to spend all his chrono on. Like, you don't want to make it too obvious, because then maybe Astrea can just build up a bunch of shield batteries and get a bunch of immortals out. But you also, you don't want to delay everything too much. So TriGGeR is just going to go for the 3-gate, and I don't hate it. I'm really curious to see if he can pull this one off and break the early expand of Astrea.
That's definitely something that we see become like a really contentious point in a lot of these games. You're trying to punish the opposing player for going to such levels, such lengths of greed. And Astrea will go for the robo facility in the natural. He wants to have those immortals coming out to defend as quickly as possible. But is this 3rd gateway that's up towards the front, Kev? Do you think that that's going to be enough for him to break him before he can get those units out?
It will all come down to the micro. It will come down to what we target fire. It will come down to whether or not we can gun down the battery, or imagine a world where we can kill the pylon. Like, batteries are honestly very flimsy, and it's going to take a little while before that first immortal is out. The adepts are going to get a couple of shots up on the stalkers. I don't know, man. It is possible. It's not just a 3-gate, by the way. It's 4-gate. So if you talk about fully sending it, Nate, this is fully sending it. Astrea not building his immortal yet, by the way. I feel like every second counts if you're being all into this degree. I would have liked to see him get an immortal queued up a little bit quicker than that.
Yeah, that's the only thing that's going to really save him in this situation, I think. And even then, I'm still looking at that there's 1 pylon that's powering both the robo and the shield battery. So I think you're going to need at least another battery. I'm still going to say I feel like you need a pylon, but the money is becoming a problem because he needs money to build the second immortal after the first one finishes.
Micro is going to be really important here. Ideally, if you're TriGGeR, what you want to do is send an adept forward, activate the barrier 1 time, exactly, but you also have to worry about overcharge. You don't want to lose any stalkers. He is not losing stalkers yet. He's going to run forward. Here's that battery overcharge. I gotta say, this went really well for Astrea. That was a kill on the 2 stalkers, actually. But, yeah, now that there's no more battery overcharge, he will have a war prism. So it really all comes down to Micro now. Now, this is it, Nate. Like, this game will end in the next 40 seconds in favor of either of these guys.
Yeah, he's doing that pick up and drop it. Micro has another immortal on the way. Goes to focus. The warp prism, not able to get it. Does finally get it after running through the backside. The last shield battery is running out of energy, Kev. Stalkers are doing everything they can, but TriGGeR is running out of units. His reinforcements are not here just yet, and his forces are going down on the way out.
Yeah, that was just not good enough. Well done by Astrea. Really good positioning on the Immortal, really good positioning on the Prism. And even though both units went down in the end, I think the initial exchange was just not good enough. TriGGeR lost 2 Stalkers and got nothing other than popping the overcharge. That was just not quite it. I love the call to go like Immortal Prism. Like, it feels so natural to go Immortal, but I actually think the micro potential that the Prism gives you and making it so hard for your opponent that obviously doesn't have Blink and doesn't have a good way to kill that Prism might actually make this a very solid choice. And of course, Astrea with non-stop gateway production too. Well done, man. That's not an easy hold, but he actually passed the test with flying colors.
Yeah, that was absolutely stellar, and I think you said it best because he only has 2 gateways, so the nonstop gateway production during that, even though the Immoral and that Warp Prism got targeted down so diligently by TriGGeR, he actually allowed the 2 gateways to end up overwhelming his fort because he's just trying to get rid of these robo units and struggling therein. And there you go. There's another save on the Stalker. Doesn't want to leave any units. Doesn't want to leave anything on the table. Could go for the pylon. He warps in a few adepts. I'm just assuming because they're not going to take that bonus damage. They're a low priority target. But it's 2 base versus 1 base, Kev. And I feel like your comment about that this is the kind of thing where the game is going to end at the end of this battle. There you go. Astrea with the 2-0 TriGGeR. Not